10. 10 most influential albums on my life so far. I'm Chris. This is Late Night Dead Wax. Welcome back. So I've seen this going around for a while now. Other people doing it. It seemed like a really fun idea until I sat down and started to try and narrow it down to 10. I've had a lot of records over my life. A lot of albums, CDs, cassettes, the whole deal. And to narrow it down to the 10 most influential, it's obviously so far, because there may be other ones that are just going to make a huge impact in my life. So these are my 10. Let me know what you think in the comments. First up, from 1977, I have a K-tel record. I'm guessing that there's a lot of people out there in the VC that kind of got their start in records with K-tel. If you're anywhere around my age, this was the way to get your biggest bang for the buck. Came out in 77. It was the first record I remember ever having. Not this specific one. I actually picked this up at a record store for 50 cents just for the fact that I knew that this was the first one I ever remembered having. My mom got it for me, or maybe she got it for herself and it was a hand-me-down. Either way, K-tel used to overload their records with way too many songs, and the fidelity definitely suffers. Next one up, Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. Came out in 77 also. This cassette was always in my dad's car, and growing up I knew every word, still do. Love this record. Kind of takes me straight back to being a kid listening to cassettes in a car, and I still love it to this day. This is the big breakthrough for Meatloaf, coming from the land of theater and stage. We got this masterpiece, and still one of my favorite albums of all time. Came out in 77. This is a 1980 reissue. I had bought one from Target, a Target exclusive, really cool colored vinyl and everything. And my sister, Jamie, had a copy of it, and we compared the two. And hers was a early 80s reissue. And the early 80s reissue just sounded amazing comparatively. Not that I thought the other one, the Target version, sounded bad, but I ran out and grabbed the first $8 one I saw. That's the cool thing about this record. They pressed so many, and it was reissued so many times. It's not a hard one to find. It still goes for pretty cheap, and huge influence on my life. Early introduction to some hard rock, if you could call it that. I guess that's where we'd classify Meatloaf. But I really loved it, and still do to this day. Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. 1982, I was pretty young, and American Fool, John Cougar, before he became John Cougar Mellencamp, then got to use his real name, John Mellencamp. But first introduction to John Cougar Mellencamp, super, super nostalgic record for me. In a landscape that was mostly new wave at the time. There wasn't a whole lot of rock, but the pop stations that we as kids listened to, John Cougar, got played a lot. And Jack and Diane was like the theme song for getting ready for school in the morning. And this one will always take me back. I did not have this on vinyl. Back in 82, I had it on cassette, and I wore it out. But this is first press. Nothing real special. All of them sound good, real easy to obtain, and start to finish, just a great rock album. And when a lot of people were, Springsteen was the boss, John Cougar was the king of the Midwest. Oh, how things change in just 1 year. 1983, Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. First introduction to metal for me. My Uncle Kelly bought it for me for Christmas, and I absolutely loved it since then. Uh, you can say what you want about Motley Crue, but this was like almost terrifying for me as a young kid. It felt so evil comparatively, and set the stage for my absolute love for heavy metal. And I still remember back to that Christmas getting this. I was so excited. I mean, it's Motley at their finest, and thanks, Uncle Kelly. You set me down the path that I'm on. So Motley Crue, shout at the devil. So Motley Crue got me into the hard rock and heavy metal stuff, and in 1987, another game changer for me. As my musical taste progressed, of course, I found all of the old, what at that time was like almost classic rock, like Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. We got Whitesnake, the 1987 album. Um, it felt like Coverdale was our Robert Plant, for me as a kid, and just could not get enough of this record. This is another one that I had on cassette and just absolutely wore out. Um, I did have it on vinyl way back. Don't have that copy anymore. This is one I picked up not too long, well, a few years back, and it's one that I'm really glad to have in my collection. And I used to ride my bike to work when I was 13, and just listening to this puts me back on my bike, riding through whatever weather was thrown at us to get to my pizza shop job. And it's just so many fond memories, and it, it kept me in the hard rock theme. And if Led Zeppelin was bluesy, Whitesnake was hard blues, kind of exposed me to that. And then came along this absolute masterpiece, Long Cold Winter from Cinderella. Um, Still one of my favorite records of all time. This was the album that really went in a different direction for Cinderella. Night Songs was definitely more a straightforward hard rock, glam, metal. This was, man, just the bluesy riffs on this album still blow my mind. I still dig this record. One of my favorites of all time, and I just this was the height of the glam metal scene, and this is the first pressing. It's a club edition. My wife got it for me. I still dig this record. Cinderella, Long Cold Winter. 1988, high school. Still cranking the metal and kind of maturing my taste because I was around other people that were into the same types of music and got introduced to so many different cool bands. And a big one was Queensryche. One of my favorite bands out of the 80s by far. And Operation Mindcrime is, in my opinion, the greatest concept album of all time. I know that's always up for debate, but I really dig this record and still do this day. And I got to see them on this tour. They were the opening act for Metallica, and me and a couple friends went, and it was an amazing time. We're blown away. Obviously, both bands were incredible, but at that moment, then it was all a Queensryche for me. Everything I can get my hands on, and this record I still play. This is not an original pressing. This is one of the from the Capitol Vaults audiophile edition. It sounds great. It really does. The reissue from a few years ago was on 2 records. I am inherently lazy, so I was very glad to get the 1 record edition. Then I don't have to change the record as often. But it does. It sounds amazing to me. And yeah, Operation Mindcrime. I mean, it's as close as I'm ever going to get to prog, but it's definitely very progressive comparatively to like the Cinderella and stuff. But Jeff Tate and Chris DeGarmo. I mean, it was just like a perfect, everything came together, and the videos that went with this, just one of my favorite records of all time. And Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. All right, so now I'm an adult. Out of high school, a friend of mine said, "Have you heard about this band, 9 Inch Nails?" And I hadn't. I was a little late to the party, but in the early 90s, I picked up Pretty Hate Machine. First on CD, and loved it. And then it was broken and fixed. And I waited in line for the Downward Spiral when it first came out. They were all on CD. Back then, we were starting to lose the record in record stores. And I was lucky enough to grab this at a record show. It's a U.S. first press. It's an amazing record. It is my all-time favorite record. Every record I listen to, I judge on the Pretty Hate Machine scale. And still, this just, it left such an impression and totally opened my world to the whole industrial thing and electronic music, and everywhere it took me from there. But 9 Inch Nails, Pretty Hate Machine, this didn't just leave an impression. This left a dent. This is such a great record. What made this all very tough is I'm not a kid anymore, so I got a lot of years, and trying to come up with 10 that were the most influential on me was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. And now there's a big gap. So for me to be able to put all this together, the last two are actually fairly recent discoveries for me. And this one is 1959's Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. This was my first introduction to jazz, which I've grown to love. This all just happened in the last few years. This copy here is the Columbia Jazz Masterpieces and edition, and it says it's digitally remastered directly from the original analog tapes. I've got a couple copies of this record. I just decided to grab this one. This, I think, is a gateway to jazz for a lot of people that don't get jazz, because I was that person. I literally bought my first copy of this because I saw in a video, everybody said, "Oh, you have to have that in your collection." And there's been a handful of albums over the years that I've followed that line, got the record, and was just underwhelmed, didn't get it. This isn't one of them. I sat down with this the first time and then drug my kids down and said, "You just got to listen to this." Now, I don't think they get it. It took me a while too. It took me a discerning ear, and now here we are. I have a lot of jazz records, and it's all owed to this record. And just, man, Miles Davis, still, every record of his that I have blows my mind. And this is where it all started. Kind of Blue. This was my gateway. With all of the rest of them, I've kind of gone chronologically on my life as to when I discovered them and when the impact of the influence of the specific record had on my life. This one is out of order. This one is the one that had the biggest vinyl influence on me. I'd say it was sometime around 2000, and I was talking to my sister, Jamie, and there was a song on the radio, and out of nowhere I said, I think I'm a Fleetwood Mac fan. And she looked at me weird, because that's a stupidly weird thing to say. And I was like, no, like, the more I listen to the songs, the more I realize I think I like them all. So once record collecting, again, the first thing I did was grab a copy of Rumours. Back then, they were, if you paid $10, you paid way too much for it. They were in every discount bin. they've pressed this record so much, but it was still in the top 10 best-selling records of last year. Rumours is an absolute masterpiece. I get made fun of a lot because I think right now I have 6 copies, not counting my daughter's copy, which is also in the house, so 7. I've got a pile of the 77s, some of the repressings, and one of the repressings in the early 80s. I have the Walmart exclusive clear one. This is the Palace 2-disc 45 RPM version. I said earlier that I'm lazy, and I usually like to try and find the single disc version of albums I love. This was one major exception. It sounds so good. It's not the one I play the most because I gotta flip records more. But this album changed it for me. It's the one that I give out as gifts now when somebody's getting into records. That's getting more and more expensive because they're getting a little bit harder to find and they're not in the $5 bin anymore. But yeah, Fleetwood Mac, Rumours. This one changed me a lot and changed my record collecting habits. And I mean, it is an absolute 5-star classic. So that's it. That's the 10. That's the 10 most influential records on my life or albums. This was a tough one to do. I've been listening to music as long as I can remember, all the way back to that K-tel record. And for me to narrow it down to 10 that influenced me was very difficult. A lot of them left, pretty big moments in my life where they really left a mark. And I'm sure that there's going to be more records that are going to come along that are going to do the same thing, and I look forward to that. And I hope everybody has as hard of a time as I had coming up with the 10 most influential, because that kind of means that you've taken in a lot of music, and that's what it's all about. It's all about the music, and this is such a wonderful hobby for that. So that'll do it for me. See you next time. So this is kind of out of order. I actually got really into this record after before I had discovered my. Ouch. Well, there's my blooper.